Hi. In today's video, we are going to discuss about one of the confluence page in regard to AWS architecture diagram. So for this, I have taken an example for core banking. As we all know, as part of the series of making the videos in context to the confluence. So when we are working on the agile environment in connect to the jira. So when we are going to provide any kind of solution, sometimes we will be even integrating this with some cloud applications also. For example, when we are working on the cloud transformation or cloud applications, different architectures, cloud service providers will be used. Either it can be AWS or it can be Azure, Google Cloud, right? So IBM, all that. In this regard, whenever we are preparing a Confluence page, especially from the context of AWS architecture diagram, as an example, I'm taking this for the core banking, wherein we need to mention about the document owner first, who is going to prepare the diagram, and also the diagram owner has to be mentioned. I'm talking about cloud architect, okay? Because normally cloud services will be provided from the architectural point of view, will be done by the cloud architect. So cloud architect details has to be mentioned here. That is point number one. At the same time, we need to mention even the team, because people who are involving in the team, right? So either it can be technical team, right? So at the same time, system design level people, right? So high level design, system, low level designs, all these things will be there. Wherein those team members details has to be mentioned here. At the same time, whenever we are preparing this architectural diagram, to whom are we going to inform? Either it can be an external stakeholders or internal stakeholders. Those details has to be mentioned under the informed part, followed by the kind of status. Status means whether this is the initial document we are preparing. Initially, this document will be in the draft stage. Draft stage means where we might require to make some changes in future. This is where generally initially it will be updated as a draft document. After that, this document will be reviewed further. So followed by the revision will be approved, and once it is approved, it will be moving on to the production side. This is where we have to update. But initially, when we are preparing the document, initially it will be in a stage of draft document itself. We will be in the draft document. This is what something which normally we do, not in the review or approved or production. Because draft document, once it is approved, then once it is reviewed, then it is approved. Followed by that, it will be moving on to the production side. So that status will be in the draft as of now. Next, when the document has been updated, so that details has to be mentioned here. Followed by this, when it comes to the AWS architecture framework, when we are creating, there are different advantages wherein we see when we are preparing AWS architecture framework. One is about operational efficiency, because operational efficiency majorly delivers the business value, continuity, etc. All that. At the same time, it will also be providing us the security of the system, protecting the system, the kind of data systems, the kind of assets. I'm talking about software assets. Everything will be maintained under the security part. At the same time, it also improves the reliability, whatever the reliability of the infrastructure you are going to maintain. So that improve the reliability as well as the kind of service disruptions and all, everything is, if any. So will be maintained under the reliability part as well. Along with this, performance efficiency, whatever the efficiency of the performance which is to be updated. So we increase the performance efficiency as well. So increasing the efficiency of the performance should also be taken into consideration, followed by the cost optimizations, etc. All that. So these are the prime and important elements will be considered as a pillars of AWS well-architected framework, which has to be updated in the document when we are preparing this. So once it is prepared, here we need to make the list of goals, whatever the goals we want to achieve for these architectural changes and all. For example, one of the goal we want to achieve is to enhance or provide some business value. Okay, business value is one of the goal we want to achieve because of the changes we want to make in the architecture. First point. For example, at the same time, it requires some reducing the technical complexity. Okay, technical and operational complexity, for example. So we have to mention the goals, like either it can be a business value, one goal, at the same time reducing the technical and operational complexity. This is also one of the goal will be updated. So followed by this, if there is any kind of diagrams, right? So whatever the architectural AWS diagrams were created by the cloud architect team, if any, the diagrams can be incorporated into this, because wherein we have an Atlassian Confluence marketplace where we can take up those details, and architectural diagrams will be prepared by the cloud architects. And whatever the diagram was given, so that architectural flow we have to write down. Here we need to write down the flow of the architecture. Whatever the architecture do we have, the flow of architecture has to be mentioned here, architectural diagram flow. So what is the initial first step, second, third, fourth, fifth, right? So those are the steps which we have to be updated in the architectural flow here. Because so that we'll be knowing about how simple the architecture is, in order to, by reducing the complexity and all, this architectural flow will be more useful to them. So once architectural flow, the next is deployment strategy, right? So because what is the deployment strategy you are following? Deployment procedure, right? So deployment procedure, whatever the steps required, right? So all these things has to be updated into the deployment strategy. This is where generally deployment procedure, what are the steps to be taken? Everything will be mentioned over here, right? So this is where something which we have to be mentioned when it comes to the deployment strategy, etc. All that. So once the deployment strategy and steps, what is that to be followed? Either it can be, let's say, for example, we are working on the DevOps environment, wherein we may be required to implement and create some CI/CD pipeline so that it will be more effective for the people to use with. Next, if there is any kind of application communication to be developed, so there are some APIs to be created. For example, REST API, or it can be HTTP API or SOAP API, right? So different APIs creation has to be made subsequently here. Finally, we need to go with SLA, because this is where generally service level agreements will be there. Initially, to have an architectural review from the AWS point of view, we need to mention the service level agreements, because service level agreements make sure what we have identified, what we have agreed, and what is that we are developing. This is where generally service level agreements comes into picture. So once the service level agreements were mentioned and all, what are the action items to be taken, and what are the different action items we are going to take, right? So in context to the implementation of the activity, for example, user interfaces is what something which we are creating for this project. Okay, right? So user interface is an action to be performed. So you need to detail the action, right? So description and all. UI designing, and implementation is essentially useful for better user experience. Okay, that's very general. And who is going to maintain this, right? So who is the owner for that? Date followed by this. You have to add the Jira ticket where this user interface assignment was done. Means, for example, we have created some user story and all, right? So whatever the ticket was added there, so those ticket has to be added into this. This is where something which is used in this regard. Next, if there is any kind of reference documentations, or if there is any kind of add links or reference documentations which is to be updated, so everything can be updated over here. This is where and how generally this AWS architectural design document, right? So in context to the core banking application as an example I'm taking, right? So if you want to prepare, this is what something which document team and as well as architecture team which has to be prepared in this regard. This is all about this video. If you have any questions, if you have any queries, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.